this is Kimberly Adams Mann from the Adams Mann team here at Shore West Realtors and TAMT Homes. And today I have a very special guest on my video. And would you like to introduce yourself?
My name is Marco Celeste. I'm the owner and operator of Curb Appeal Home Inspections.
Okay, great. So one of the reasons why we wanted to have Marco come on and do an interview is because we felt it was really important for you as our buyers and sellers to be able to see his perspective as well. So I'm just going to do a bit of, quick couple of questions back and forth with Marco. And Marco, feel free to chime in with if you have something you want to add that we didn't pre-discuss. And yes, we did give him some questions ahead of time so he could be prepared. He's not as comfortable or as messing up as I am on camera, so.
Perfect.
So first of all, Marco, let's talk about how long your company is Curb Appeal Home Inspections, correct?
Correct.
All right. And what is your phone number in case people want to reach you?
My phone number is 262-939-3474.
Okay, fantastic. And we'll come back to that as well at the end, just to help people remember, et cetera. So how long have you been in business?
I have been in the home inspection business since January of 2006. So for quite some time now.
So for those of us that are math challenged, that's almost 13 years, correct?
That's correct. It'll be 13 years real quick here.
All right, pretty soon, because we're taping this in December. So, although most people will probably see this once it is January 2019. So, all
13 years.
Yeah, almost 13 years now. All right. So, what made you want to be? I know we were talking about this ahead of time, and you were a little concerned because you're like, well, I don't really know. So, what made you want to be a home inspector?
Well, I was intrigued with the whole process, buying a handful of houses myself and going through the inspection process a number of years ago. Thought it was very interesting. Thought it was very informative and something that would be a good challenge for me. And that's kind of how I opened the door, if you will, to getting into that industry.
Okay. So, and you told me beforehand that prior to being a home inspector, what did you do?
I did a few things. I was an auto technician, and I was a sales rep for an auto parts firm prior to being a home inspector.
So like a lot of real estate agents, a lot of home inspectors have something that they did, what we call, pre-real estate days.
Right.
And in your case, it's kind of interesting, I think, because my background is with the teaching and sales as well. It's interesting that your background had a hands-on element to it with the auto, mechanic stuff, and then of course auto sales, the sales part as well. So that's really interesting because that kind of gives you that hands-on feeling. When you first started as a home inspector, kind of leading up to that, did you instantly like it when you first started and went through the training and all?
I did. It was very interesting. I saw value in it. I liked what the service would provide. I liked the detail that you could provide a client with, and just getting to know all about the home.
Right.
Being able to educate the buyer on the systems and components of the home. So I like that immensely.
Yeah, which is, I think, probably one of the reasons why we've connected so well with you as well, because the crux of our business is very much about us educating people on the real estate process. So that's kind of interesting that even though both you and I came from completely different backgrounds, we both have that as kind of a core component of our business, that we want to educate and inform people.
Oh, most definitely.
Yeah. So have kind of along that line of educating and informing, what are some of the legal requirements, or I think they refer to it legally as like the scope of your job or what it covers?
As far as what the licensing and such are, or what the requirements are for what we need to do as an inspector?
Well, let's start with the licensing requirements and continuing ed, that sort of thing. Like what do you have to do in order to stay? Is it just, some people, like a contractor, doesn't necessarily have to be licensed. You have licensed and unlicensed. Do you have to be licensed as a home inspector? What's involved
Correct.
with
So in the state of Wisconsin, there is a state license for home inspection, and that ties in with a national exam. There's a national home inspector's examination. In the state of Wisconsin, you need to have both of those to be a home inspector. In addition to that, there is 40 hours every 2 years of continuing education that's required for us. And those are classes and seminars and things about different trends and stuff that are happening in the building industry, different systems and components we may see, so we can keep up on those types of things. So, but yeah, definitely in Wisconsin, there is a Wisconsin license, and like I said, you have to have passed the national examination for home inspection. So obviously, I have those credentials.
Okay. What are you a member of other like national trade organizations? I know there are different organizations as a home inspector you can join.
There are a handful of different trade organizations. I am a member of INTERNACHI, the International Association of Certified Home Inspectors. That's a national organization, obviously, or an international organization. So I'm a member of that.
Okay, excellent. So then kind of leading on to that, since those are the legal requirements, what the scope of the job, or what are the main duties of a home inspector? Like what do you do?
Well, my job is to go through the systems and components of the home, pretty much from top to bottom, and look over those systems and components and make sure that that house is in good working order, or at least educate the client on the condition of the home, and that pretty much all aspects of the home that we go through, anything from roof to foundation and everything in between. Report on that to the client to let them know what they're getting into, what their expectations can be, if there's things that need to be addressed, concerns, which I'm sure we'll go into a little bit more here, but that's kind of the gist of it.
Okay. And obviously home inspectors, like any other job, you are self-employed. So what is pricing based on for you?
Pricing for the inspection will vary depending on the age of the home and the square footage of the home are two main factors. Depending on service area, sometimes there is additional charge, but most of the time we're in southeastern Wisconsin, so we're pretty standard as far as that goes. And then whether or not somebody would want to have a radon test in conjunction with their home inspection, that obviously would change the cost of the inspection.
Mm-hmm. But for a basic home inspection, that's based on, and it's interesting because I was not aware, so the age of the home changes your pricing?
Correct.
Oh, that's interesting. So is it like the older the home, the higher the price? Or, I knew it was based on square footage because obviously the amount you have to check.
If I look at a house that's over 100 years old, it's slightly more for that. Typically find that type of home has had more work done over the time. There's more hands that have touched it. There's more potential for issues. The building practices 100 plus years ago were quite different than what we do today, so a little bit more involved on that type of inspection. So the 100-year break there that's the price difference.
Okay, so when you say 100-year, are you talking about like back to the 1920s, because we're almost at 2020 now, or are you talking about more like the 1800s type build houses?
Early 1900s, definitely late 1800s. Obviously, yeah, every year that goes by, we creep up into more modern construction, if you will. But yes, anywhere from, especially the pre-1900 houses, and I would say even things into the early teens, different building practices than what we would have today, obviously.
Yeah, and a lot of times I know with some of those older houses, a lot of them have the radiant heat, as opposed, if they still have the original heating source, they've got radiant heat as opposed to forced air, which is a very different system and does take a little bit more time to check out
Correct.
each individual radiator. So it's kind of more, as much as it is about the age of the house, it's actually more about your time that you're basing it on in some ways.
Correct. It's more time consuming to do that type of house, so the fees are based on that, if you will,
Okay.
and the reporting that goes along with it.
Okay, and that's really interesting. I've learned something to myself today. So what are there different levels of importance on a home inspection report, kind of moving on to the report itself?
And typically, the things that are focused on the report and the way things are listed we're talking about major concerns, talking about safety concerns, and then we get into repair and maintenance concerns, and then items to monitor. So pretty much 4 categories is how the rating scale is, if you will, depending on the severity of what we see.
Okay, that's kind of interesting. And what does your report look like? I mean, what are the different, like, how is it divided up a bit so that people understand?
The report is divided into sections as far as different aspects of the home. So there'll be an exterior section, there'll be a roof section, we'll have a basement section. Every room more or less is spelled out kind of in its own section.
Okay. And you mentioned that, you have different things like, major concerns and safety concerns and things of this nature. What are the most common safety problems that you see on a property?
Well, first let's, I think, talk about what those concerns mean a little bit.
Sure.
As far as people always want to know what they can maybe negotiate for, or what can be repaired, or what needs to be repaired. And major concerns are things that are going to negatively affect the value of the home. So we may be looking at something like a roof that has leaks or is in need of complete replacement. We might be looking at foundation concerns, where we might be looking at structural repairs that need to be done to the home. So something that has significant costs associated with it is where the major concern category comes in. Safety concerns could be minor costs or could be major costs, depending on what they are. But we highlight those because those are things that are going to affect the health and safety of the occupants of the home. So it could be something like a smoke detector, a carbon monoxide detector missing, or we may have a heat exchanger that's expelling carbon monoxide out of a furnace. Definitely would be a health concern for the occupant of the home. And then from there, we'll have the monitor category. That might be something we see that might not necessarily be 100% correct, if you will. Might be some foundation movement or something that has probably been happening over time, and we're going to make a note for somebody to observe that and see if there's any further movement. Obviously, we're looking at it on a one-time shot, so we don't know whether it moved 20 years ago or whether that's something that's still active. So that's where the monitor category comes in. And then when we get into the repair and maintenance, those are typically things that a homeowner can expect that they would do on an existing house. Might be painting some areas, might be replacing some caulk that's missing or damaged, just general home improvement and maintenance type repairs. So typically not things that are going to be detrimental to the house, but certainly things that should be addressed for the comfort and safety and such of the occupants.
So that kind of comes, the repair and maintenance part kind of comes into, like, kind of goes into that education part, and that you're educating on them on what to expect from their home in the future, as well as what it may have had in the past.
Correct.
Okay. All right. That's cool. So kind of getting back to that, what do you think are, now I know with safety, the safety report section has a lot to do, and I know a lot of agents use that because it has like our FHA loans and our VA loans, they kind of require some of those safety things have to be fixed in order to move forward in a transaction. What do you think of as the most, what would you say are the most common ones that you come across?
Most common safety issues that we run into, I would say, are typically electrical issues. We run into amateur wiring or maybe GFCI receptacles that aren't installed. From there, I would say we run into, surprisingly enough, a fair amount of homes with inoperative or missing smoke detectors or carbon monoxide detectors. Surprisingly enough, we see that on a fairly regular basis. Missing handrails guardrails, things like that. Those are things that come up fairly often. I would say those are where the safety concerns typically lie, and those are the bulk of them we see.
Yep, I can understand that. And I know it seems like for even in my house, I don't know that I have all the smoke detectors and carbon monoxide detectors I'm supposed to have. And partly that's because I don't have any children at home, and partly because those things, they always seem to break so easy.
People get annoyed with them when the batteries go dead, and they pull them out, and next thing you know, they forget, and then we find them on the inspection.
Yep, or you find them sitting on a shelf, you know, in the house, so they just haven't been re-put back on. I know
That definitely happens.
you have a bad day in the kitchen and that smoke detector comes down, but it absolutely
Right.
should go back up for sure.
Definitely. Very important safety feature to have.
Yeah. Thank you so much for joining with us today. We're actually going to end the first section right here and remind you that our inspector that we're interviewing today is Marco Celeste with Curb Appeal Home Inspections. Of course, his details can be found there underneath this video, or if you need to contact us, feel free and we'll be happy to connect you with Marco Celeste.